Thanks for joining us here on Fox Local and on the FOX6 YouTube channel. And by us, I mean Fox 6 is kind of a royal plural because I'm just here all by myself today. But that's all right. We have a lot to talk about, and it certainly is going to give me quite a bit of information to provide to you today. So strap in. We're going to get the weather news rolling for you here. And of course, the top of that has been Hurricane Melissa. We're getting some of the most recent new video coming out of the Caribbean, and it is absolutely heartbreaking. It is breathtaking, jaw-dropping, use whatever descriptor you want. It is really difficult to look at in many ways. Entire neighborhoods are taken out and buildings are down. So this is the latest from Jamaica, of course, after Hurricane Melissa made landfall earlier this week as a Category 5 storm. The video captured from a rooftop shows those roof roofs, mountains of debris, flooding in the streets of Montego Bay. The storm killed at least 8 people, more than 25,000 people placed into shelters in Jamaica. Melissa now, of course, bringing those winds and the flooding and the storm surge through the Bahamas and eventually moving toward Bermuda. Now, this morning, we're also getting a look at the destruction left behind in Cuba. Look at this heartbreaking video indeed. Melissa, of course, hit there as well. It was a Category 3, strong Category 3 when it made landfall in Cuba. Officials say roofs are blown off buildings, homes have collapsed. About 735,000 people are still in evacuation shelters. Cuba is already dealing with a severe economic crisis, and the hurricane, of course, is now causing blackouts, food and fuel shortages on top of everything else. What an absolute mess. All right, let's get you caught up on what's going on with the hurricane, of course, and also take you through your regional outlook here as well. Starting with a look at Hurricane Melissa, where the storm is sitting right now. You see that St. George label? That, of course, is Bermuda, that tiny little island right there that's already seeing some of the outer bands of rain roll up and into the area. The storm itself is actually getting a little bit more reorganized, a little bit easier to define the eye. It's over open water right now. The water temperature is still sufficient to supply it with the fuel it needs to stay strong. It is a Category 2 hurricane, so while it was a 5 and a 2 seems by comparison to be fairly low end, this is still carrying sustained winds at 105 miles per hour. That is the sustained or steady wind. The wind gusts are 125. It's definitely picked up pace for a very long time. This was almost stationary, and then when it did start to move, it was only like 5 to maybe 8 miles per hour. Now it's moving along at a pretty good clip here at 24 miles per hour, which is typical in the later stages of these types of storms. So we'll keep an eye on that. Its track will take it farther off to the northeast, passing by Bermuda on the western side, which again puts Bermuda in that front right quadrant. As it moves this way, Bermuda right there will be in that heavier hit front right quadrant, and then it will continue up well off to sea, but it's going to make for some choppy conditions in the northeast as well. This is what it looks like on the Fox weather model, which in its origin was developed as a tropical model, so is very good at tracking these types of storms. And you can see how it moves through there. 10:30 continues to move off to the north and east as we get through Friday morning, and then pushes up toward Atlantic Canada and out over the open northern Atlantic, where the current is a little cooler usually, and that usually diminishes these things, but still looks to be quite the storm even as we get into Sunday morning as it moves out of the range of our model data. Now, just to get you kind of caught up on all of the stats with this, Hurricane Melissa tied for the 3rd strongest Atlantic storm based on pressure, the central air pressure. We talked about this a lot yesterday. That's a very key measurement when it comes to tropical systems. The lower that number, the more the air is rushing toward that low pressure, the wind speeds get ramped up, the intensity of the storm is elevated. So yes, it is the tied for the 3rd strongest Atlantic storm based on air pressure. Strongest Atlantic hurricane as well, for hurricane was Allen in 1980, had 190 mile per hour winds. Strongest Atlantic hurricane to make landfall was the Labor Day hurricane back in 1935. That's before the names were starting to be added, and then Dorian in 2019 with 185 mile per hour winds. So yes, Melissa is in good company there with a long list of incredibly strong storms. Many of them since 2000, late 1980s, got to go all the way back to the Labor Day storm there of 1935 to get into that crowd. But most of that top list there is, well, half of it anyway, is in the 2000s, and 2 out of the 5 or 2 out of the 6 there are 2019, 2025. And coming up a little later on in the show, we're going to talk to a doctor of climatology about what's going on with these storms and why we're getting such a change in how our tropical systems are setting up, their intensity and everything else. All right, now let's switch over to look at our regional outlook here. We'll get an idea of what's going on back here at home. Couldn't be more different. That's a massive area of low pressure. We've been dealing with a massive area of high pressure. Now, there is a low off to our south and east, and that's been spinning around. This is the one that was to our west. Remember that for a few days? Then it dove south, and now it's moving north and east, really soaking the Ohio Valley up into parts of New York State and continuing off to the north and east from there. To our immediate west is a cold front. Now, that's generating some very light sprinkles and some snow, but we're ahead of that, and it's much calmer today. In fact, it was calm enough for us to get some fog. We did have a dense fog advisory with a special weather statement up around Rhinelander for the continuing fog, even at this hour. And closer to that low we were just talking about, there are numerous wind advisories through parts of Pennsylvania, New York, getting into Vermont as well, even down into parts of West Virginia. Now, if we go to Sky Vision Plus here to show you tomorrow's weather today, from a statewide point of view, you'll notice the nice calm conditions for the remainder of the day today. Even the wind has eased off, and let's face it, that was our biggest complaint for a good portion of the last 2 or 3 days. It was kind of breezy. The wind has eased off, so it's a beautiful day today. Does get a bit cloudier as we go through parts of Friday, but we should stay dry until very late Friday evening. I think after 9 or 10 o'clock, and even then it's just sprinkles on into Saturday morning, and then that makes way for some clearer sky by Saturday afternoon and Saturday night, and certainly on into Sunday. We're clearing out wonderfully. As far as numbers go, our statewide forecast for today's highs takes us up into the mid to upper 50s as we look around the Milwaukee area, some low 50s Madison, and up in Green Bay should be stuck in the 40s in the far north. As we look to the Midwest region for our forecast highs today, you can see a little pocket of warmer air that is out there. We're not going to get to tap into that in the near future. We actually cool down a bit before we warm up again, but you see there's still some mild air out there. It's milder to our south. Chicago is pretty much where we are, but get to 58 today as you look down to Indianapolis. Even that's not too out of the range of where we are. And you want some heat, you got to go south. Miami, 79. That's for Miami, that's not that hot. Even Phoenix at 90. It's not exactly a lot of heat there. It's very, seasonal to slightly below as far as the nation is concerned. But we get back to an above average situation as we look ahead here. The 8 to 14 day temperature trend pushes our entire region and most of the continental U.S. into that above average range. If we look at our high temperatures for the next few days there, even as we get a couple of cooler days this weekend, it's not super chilly. Low 50s is typical this time of year. Then we get back on the mild side early next week and beyond, as we talked about before. One of the other interesting trends is a very average stretch of overnight lows. There are a couple of cooler nights in there. No real freezes, though. We've had the one official freeze, but it doesn't look like we'll get too many more in that category for a while here. And there's a little look at your 6-day planner as well as we get ready for Halloween. Now, eventually, though, snow is going to fly, and that is why the Milwaukee DPW's team are getting ready. Look at this from their Facebook page. They posted this, that they were getting ready. DPW Milwaukee saying they're not quite ready to talk about and they called it the S word yet, but the crews are. They had their snow prep meetings. They were underway because one day that winter is coming and we're going to have to know how to deal with it. So we appreciate all the fine folks down at DPW for getting prepped and getting ready for what is going to be winter in Wisconsin one way or the other. Whether we end up with a lighter side of La Nina or the heavier side of La Nina, we have to get through it, and we'll do it together with the help of the DPW, of course. Now, one spot in Minneapolis is actually getting ready to kick off the holiday season right now. Well, pretty much right now. On November 1st, Nordic Village will be making its return to the Four Seasons Hotel rooftop with a few experiences at the lodge, updated menus. They're going to have winter markets, kind of a cool little road trip, perhaps. The village includes 5 cabins seating up to 4 guests, 3 cabins seating up to 8 guests, and and the lodge with seating for up to 24. Have a good little party right there. Nordic Village will be hosting a variety of local artists. They'll have makers and creators. It's a European-inspired market experience during the weekends, kind of like what they do down in Chicago as well. Looks really cool with the little cabins there. Road trip, anybody? All right, well, don't go anywhere just yet. We've got a lot more Wisconsin weather experts coming up in a couple of minutes as we sit down to talk about climate and how it impacts our tropical hurricane season. Welcome back to Wisconsin Weather Experts right here on Fox Local and, of course, the Fox 6 YouTube channel. Now, we have been very busy of late talking about Hurricane Melissa with good reason. Of course, it has been a record-breaking storm, definitely topping the charts in almost every category. And we have seen a lot more of that in recent years, which speaks to how things have changed here on planet Earth. So to speak more on that is an expert in such things. We're joined by Dr. Daniel Guilford. He's a PhD in climate science. Thank you so much for coming on Wisconsin Weather Experts this evening, or this afternoon, rather.
Thanks, Rob. I'm so glad to be here.
Hey, well, great to have you. We really want to get into this because, of course, Melissa has been making headlines. It's been topping the charts, like I said, coming into this. But what we've seen is an increase in these more extreme tropical events in recent years.
Yeah, this is really consistent with what we expect out there. There's a lot of warmth right now in the Atlantic Ocean as the climate system around the planet has been increasing in temperature. A lot of that heat is getting trapped in the oceans, and we're seeing that expressed in these very warm ocean temperatures that are in the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico and North Atlantic Ocean generally. There's just a lot more warmth out there, about 2 degrees Fahrenheit, 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than what we would expect in a world without climate change.
Right. And that may seem to someone at home who's, watching, that may seem like a very small number, 2 or 3 degrees. But essentially, that 2 or 3 degrees is either like switching on the system or switching it off, because when you fall below that minimum of 80 to sustain these storms, they dissipate very rapidly. That 2 or 3 to crank it up keeps them going and strengthens them very significantly.
Yeah, it's almost like a threshold behavior. You can imagine if I bumped your temperature up right now by 3 degrees Fahrenheit,
That's
you would be feeling very uncomfortable indeed.
Yeah, especially if
And
it's your
that's
body
actually
temperature. If the human body's running 2 or 3 degrees hot, you got to go to the hospital.
That's exactly right. And our planet's running a fever. And we're seeing this. One of the symptoms of our planet running a fever is that these ocean temperatures are quite a bit warmer. Now, why does that matter? Well, a hurricane is almost like the engine in your car. It needs some fuel source in order to spin rapidly. It takes the fuel source, which is the ocean surface, and it converts that potential energy that it's getting in the form of very warm heat at the surface into kinetic energy in the form of winds. That's what a hurricane's job is to take that extra heat that is trapped at the surface in the tropical regions and move it to the extratropical regions through wind. And so a hurricane can be more efficient at moving that heat around if there's more heat to sort of gather in the first place. And one of the things we see right now is that temperatures in this region around where Melissa reached its maximum intensity of 185 miles an hour, the temperatures in that region were about 3 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than we would expect for this time of year. Why is that? Why is it so warm? Well, we know our planet is running a fever. And in a world without climate change, these temperatures would have been about 3 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than what we're seeing. And that can lead to these storms becoming very powerful.
Yeah, it really just does fuel the intensity, as you're saying, the sea surface temperature. And the other thing that, of course, made headlines was the pressure. That was breaking records as far as being one of the lowest pressure readings ever recorded. And I've had a lot of people ask me about that, in part because we typically report that in millibars, which isn't as commonly used. A lot of folks are more familiar with inches of mercury. But at the end of the day,
Right.
let's touch on how, air pressure is key to these storms and how that might be connected to our changing planet.
Yeah, so as the sea surface temperatures of the planet warm and as the sea surface temperatures underneath a hurricane warm, you can imagine that the air that's touching those warm temperatures starts to pick up that heat and then rise rapidly. And as that air it takes that heat up and rises rapidly, it vacates the area, right? And so the pressure around where that air is rising starts to fall. And we can see these really rapid pressure falls when we're seeing a hurricane like Melissa that is correlated with these very warm sea surface temperatures. Indeed, we saw a very rapid deepening of the pressure in this storm, one of the most intensifying storms on modern record, extremely rapidly intensifying was Hurricane Melissa. And that's again, very closely associated with these warm sea surface temperatures.
Now, there is some upside, not to the warming sea surface temperatures, but there's some upside in that this is happening at a time when, A, we have a lot more in the way of sophisticated scientific technology to measure and track and start to study these things, and also we have a bit better look at how to survive these things and how to make infrastructure work with it, but we can't keep pace.
Yeah, it's a real challenge. We're living in a world that has already been and is continuing to be affected by climate change. We have affected our climate system and the storms are responding. So how will we respond in turn? We are one of the most successful species on the planet for adapting to new and different conditions. We have changed our conditions and now we're going to have to continue to adapt. And people who are in the path of these storms, specifically in the Caribbean, along any of the coastlines of the United States, and indeed along many of the coastal regions around the world, they're going to be increasingly facing numerous competing and different diverse threats that are going to continue to affect these coastal communities as the climate system continues to warm. So how will we change our behavior? How will we invest in keeping our communities safe? How will we look after the people around us to make sure that we live in a world that is happy and healthy for our current and future generations? These are really important questions. And as we're thinking about, a hurricane like Melissa, this is a great opportunity to have these kinds of conversations. What are you doing and what are we doing collectively to make our communities safe?
Yeah, it's a great conversation to have, absolutely. And it's also something that is closer to home than a lot of people think. There is the tendency, here we're in the Midwest and it's a hurricane. That's not usually something that impacts us even indirectly. But this whole concept of a warming planet, warmer air holding more moisture, the Milwaukee area saw proof of that over the summer with historic floods. It's essentially the exact same concept.
That's exactly right. So as the atmosphere increases in temperature, it can hold more water. You can imagine as you increase the temperature of an environment, there's more water in the air. That means it can actually rain more effectively too. One of the things we're seeing with these hurricanes is there's more rain in them. You can remember Hurricane Harvey just a couple years ago decimated the Houston area with a lot of flooding in 2017.
Right.
The atmosphere is just holding more moisture right now, which means heavier rainfalls can occur, and that can really have severe consequences for communities that are not expecting, a severe rainfall as they're receiving.
All things to think about as we move forward as a community, as a planet, and of course, as a scientific community. Thank you so much, Doctor. We appreciate you chiming in on this, and we'll hopefully touch back in the days, weeks, and months ahead, and maybe have some positive news to pass along, maybe some huge breakthroughs or advancements in the technology.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
There you go. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you for joining Wisconsin weather experts. Have some fun stories to chat about on the other side of the commercial break. So stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Yes, Christmas may be 2 months away. Oh, I think we're actually down to like 57 days or something like that at last check. Yeah, it's coming up quicker than you might think. 56 days. Christmas, yeah, is not exactly around the corner, but it's getting closer, and the Capitol Christmas tree is now on its way to the district. The 53-foot red fir tree was cut down near Lake Tahoe in Nevada over the weekend. The tree is expected to make stops across the country before arriving at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland on November 20th. And I think by November 20th, we'll all be more in the mood for a giant Christmas tree. It looks beautiful, though. That spectacular thing right there. All right, now, it's a spectacular thing in my opinion, but I am a part of it, so I suppose I'm a little biased. It's called the ISOBAR. It is our regional weather podcast. I sit down every 2 weeks with the chief meteorologists in Chicago and Detroit. Emily, Rich, and I chat about just about everything under the sun, and we did get into it about winter forecasting.
So it's, not a sure bet of more snow, but we're leaning toward a wetter season. So you can, take that any which way.
No, that's a really good point because, it's such a precarious number between, wet snow, rain, freezing rain. That it doesn't take much in the atmosphere to change for those very different types of precipitation to come down. And I don't know about you guys, but I would rather have a snowy winter than an icy winter. And that's
Absolutely.
my fear right now for at least my region, particularly more like south central and western portions of the state, is that we may get more than a couple of ice storms. Pretty much every winter you're going to get one or so. But this pattern could set that up. But like you said, Emily, it could also just be rain, or maybe it is a little colder and it's just a full-on snow. Now, the Detroit region is a little bit farther east, Rich, but you're pretty much in the same boat.
We're in the same boat. I show the graphics because they generate conversation, and I don't bet the mortgage on trying to predict what the winter will be like based on 2 graphics.
Oh, I gotta love Rich. He always tells it like it is. If you want to check out the ISO bar and hear us get a little nerdy, you can do that anytime you want. It is on YouTube. Just click on the playlist tab. You'll find all of the ISO bar podcast editions right there. And you can also find it on your Fox local mobile app and on the connected TV app. Now, as Rich pointed out, it is, of course, Michigan that he is focused on. And we're going to go to Michigan now and talk turkey. A couple of turkeys, actually. They had a bit of a run-in with law enforcement while walking across the road in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Oh, my. All right, you can see the body cam video here. An officer trying to shoo the turkeys off the road. Well, instead of leaving, the turkeys actually ended up following the officer back into the squad car. That is not at all what the plan was. We're told everyone ended up going their separate ways eventually, but not before a few gobbles were exchanged. The police department wrote about the encounter on their Facebook saying, "Just another day in Ann Arbor." Well, we got a lot of wild turkeys around here too, but I don't know if any of them have ever had a ride in a Wisconsin police car. Who knows? Might have happened. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back here again tomorrow with another edition of Wisconsin Weather Experts.